A very good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the IPG-KBA Virtual Colloquium 2020, organized by the Department of Planning, Innovation, and Research. I am Murthy from the Institute of Teacher Education, International Languages Campus, Malaysia, and I am your moderator for today's presentation. Now, before we proceed with the presentation, I will briefly explain to you the format. The speaker will present for about 40 minutes, and this will be followed by a question and answer session with the audience. If you have a question for the speaker, please feel free to post in the chat box. The speaker will answer your questions at the end of the session. If we do not get to your question during today's webinar, we will follow up later. Lastly, we encourage you to share today's webinar with your social networks. Next, allow me to introduce our presenter for today, Mr. Michael Stone. Now, Mr. Michael Stone currently serves as the Director of Innovative Learning for the Public Education Foundation in Chattanooga, Tennessee. He played a central role in the development of the first Fab Lab in the state of Tennessee in 2014 and has since led an effort to open digital fabrication labs dubbed Volkswagen E-Labs in 16 public schools in Hamilton County, Tennessee, thanks to a $1 million grant from Volkswagen Group of America. He earned a Bachelor of Science degree in computer science from Bryan College in 2006 and a Master's of Arts in Instructional Leadership in 2008. He has authored 2 books, Oh, That's Education, and Let Me Try It, and brings a unique blend of innovative instructional practice and technical skills to the education ecosystem. His presentation today is entitled STEM Fellows and Volkswagen E-Labs. Without further ado, please welcome Mr. Michael Stone.
Well, hello and good morning from Tennessee in the United States. Thank you for that introduction, and we are excited for sure to be with all of you today to continue learning. I have enjoyed very much listening in and heard Dr. Ann Kilcher just last week presenting at this colloquium, and I'm excited to have the opportunity to bring remarks and to share some of the work as we continue to learn and grow in our part of Southeastern United States. Without further ado, I'm going to jump right in and get started. Let me make sure that my screen is sharing properly here. Okay, I believe you have it there. So as he said in the introduction, I have a background in teaching. I served as a high school mathematics and computer science teacher for about 10 years, both in private school and public school. Had an opportunity to serve at the U.S. National Science Foundation in 2015-16 before joining the Public Education Foundation to lead work in our region and our community, particularly directly working with teachers as we try to prepare teachers to rethink and reimagine what's possible in the classroom as they prepare students for learning in the 21st century. So today I want to tell a little bit of the story of how Volkswagen E-Labs came to be, what's at their core, and share a little bit of how the learning is really changing in our community and what we're starting to see from a global perspective as well. But the story doesn't really start with Volkswagen giving $1 million in partnership with the state of Tennessee to launch these labs. That did happen, and it changed my life, and it changed the lives of thousands of students in our community. But that didn't happen until 2016. And the story really starts a bit before that. The journey starts back in 2012. In 2012, Dr. Tony Donen was brought in to Chattanooga, to Hamilton County Schools, and charged with establishing what came to be known in Tennessee as a platform school. It's a public school with the charge of really serving on the tip of the spear of innovation. They have a little bit extra autonomy, and they were tasked when they were opening in 2012 with bringing STEM education to the forefront, with blending project-based learning, or PBL, as a core component of how students engaged in the learning process. And they were then tasked with documenting their process as they challenged the norm in every way, from scheduling to core curriculum to student experiences. And as they did that, they were supposed to document that and share what they learned. My office was started at that time. I was still a classroom teacher, but my office was started at the Public Education Foundation. And we were essentially tasked, as a nonprofit organization that partners with STEM School Chattanooga, we were tasked with helping them share the good work that they were doing, both helping document that process, but also spreading those innovations throughout the region and the state, and ultimately through the country. So when Dr. Donen was tasked with starting STEM School Chattanooga, he had 6 weeks to start the school, to hire the faculty, to move into a what had been a warehouse, and launch this platform, highly innovative school. So he and his staff at the time set out on a quick learning experiment. They went and they asked a really simple question to business leaders and higher ed leaders in their community. They simply asked, if we are successful, when students matriculate through STEM School Chattanooga, it's a grade 9 through 12 school, when students graduate from here, what should they be capable of? What do you need them to be able to do when they leave our high school? Or put another way, they asked this question: for students who graduate from our school, what content, skills, and habits should every student possess? Now, I'll let you know, the students that this school attracts are not just the top tier students. They are a perfect representation of the students in our community in terms of diversity. They are racially diverse. They're socioeconomically diverse. They have the same percentage population of students with high needs or special needs. And so this is a genuine public school, and they are just asked to really shift things around. So they asked this question. They asked it to teachers, they asked it to parents, but more importantly, they asked it to leaders at our universities and business leaders in our community. What was amazing is that of the answers that we received, exactly 0 out of 100 of those answers identified a particular content area. Now, this was shocking and surprising. Dr. Tony Donen has his undergraduate degree is in systems engineering from Virginia Tech University. I was involved with the school tangentially at this time. I have a background in computer science. We thought for sure that when we asked business leaders, university leaders, what they would need, we would hear things like, we need students who can be computer programmers or data scientists or particular branches of engineering. But that's not what we heard. We took all of the responses that we got, that the school took all the responses that they got to this question. They put them into like a word cloud or a Wordle, where the biggest word, the words that show up the most often, become the biggest and sort of pop out at you. And this is a pared down version of what they got. What they realized in asking this question to leaders in our community is that there wasn't necessarily a specific need for particular expertise in specific domains. I'm going to circle back to that later. It's not entirely accurate, but at face value, what we discovered was this: both higher ed and business leaders, and frankly, teachers, students, and even parents in the community, realize that what we need from school are items that you see on the screen here. So as the STEM school was starting out, they decided to adopt the 3 biggest, boldest phrases as their core tenets that they decided to build the school around. it became pretty clear that higher ed and industry partners want what the STEM school dubbed process skills, or what many organizations around the world are now calling STEM essential skills. This can take the form of many things. In the United States, this is commonly now referred to as the 4 C's. We talk about critical thinking, creativity, collaboration, and communication. But for STEM school in 2012, 2013, as they were getting started, they decided to adopt these 3 core tenets that they wanted to build the school around. Now, I'll press pause for a moment and say, I need to unpack a little bit of what we mean when we say what they wanted to build the school around. So when we think about K-12 education, really anywhere around the world, but particularly in the United States, in the sphere we're most familiar with, what we see by and large as the norm is that content mastery dominates the decision-making processes at essentially every level of K-12 education. So regardless of the domain that we're talking about, content is king, and nothing else is really even close. So when we look at how school schedules are made, well, schedules are built around particular content areas that are going to be tested, that we demand fluency in, that we want our students to be proficient in. And that makes sense. This wasn't a call to say we don't want to pay attention to content. I'm the dad of 4 little girls. I've got an 11-year-old and an 8-year-old, both of whom are in school. As a former math teacher, I certainly expect them to learn the foundations of mathematics. I recognize how important literacy, reading, and writing skills are. So we weren't calling for the school to abandon its responsibility to help students develop in content domains. Instead, what STEM school and this vision that Dr. Donan had for his group was that they could design a school that, without diluting how students engaged in content, they could elevate these process skills, these innovation, critical thinking, collaboration, so that as students developed content mastery, they also developed these process skills so that when they graduated, they could meet the needs that the community leaders had identified when filling out that question. Well, they got zero pushback on this as they were sort of rolling out this plan. Every teacher, the superintendents, the school board, the parents, the faculty, everyone agreed these 3 teaching these kinds of process skills or essential skills, it made sense. There was sort of ubiquitous agreement that we should consider adopting this. But if the school could teach these things, that would be great. However, the school took it a step further. They realized that, let's consider collaboration, for example. When we visit many schools across the country, they almost all tell us that collaboration is important. But then we ask what often becomes a condemning question. We ask them, what does collaboration look like in your school? And how do students improve in their collaboration skills? Essentially, the question is this: how do you actually get better in these domains? How do we make sure students are developing here, not just that we're saying they're important? Well, to do this, in 2015, STEM School Chattanooga built out vertical scaffolds within each of these domains. So they scaffolded process skills. They began assessing and grading these skills. For a quick example, I'm going to draw your attention to collaboration. Globally, the idea of working with a partner or working as part of a team to be productive and to increase productivity through productive collaboration is widely accepted as an aspirational goal. So if we look at collaboration, at STEM School Chattanooga, you can see they've teased this out by grade levels. So at grade 9 in collaboration, they're focusing on teaching collaboration through the lens of diversity. I mentioned earlier the school is diverse. It represents the diversity of our community, both racially, ethnically, also socioeconomically, and in terms of students with special needs. They do mean diversity, teaching collaboration through the lens of diversity, through those sort of more common descriptors. But what's pretty unique here is they actually administer the Myers-Briggs psychology test to every student as they enter. So the students can identify sort of how they think, how they interact with others, and start to learn to identify how others think and interact with them. So the STEM school spends the entire freshman year, when they talk about diversity, everything they do, from how they design curricular units to what they assess, is focused in this domain of helping students understand, how do I think? How do others think differently from me? How do we process new information and challenges? And how can I leverage my strengths to help other teams? And how can I use other teams to shore up or fill in my gaps? Well, as you can see, this then translates from moving through collaboration through the lens of diversity into peer accountability. We talk all the time that teenagers love to be together. They don't really like to work together. A big part of not liking to work together, we see not unique in teenagers, it's true with adults too. It's really difficult and uncomfortable to hold your peers accountable. So they teach how to do that. They build in that structure for students, and they assess them on how effectively they're doing that throughout every unit that they go through that year. That then progresses into time management. How do I build out products to complex problems, where I have to chunk those problems into manageable segments of time and be responsible to manage that time for myself and with my team. And then finally, networking. How do I not just leverage information or access to my peers, but how do I build relationships with other professionals, with other experts, and leverage those relationships to become a more informed and more empowered problem solver? So this idea of scaffolding process skills really changed what the student learning experience looked like. It, as I said earlier, it didn't dilute how students engaged with content. This is a high school. They still have the responsibility of teaching the same mathematics standards, literacy standards, science standards, the traditional sort of content standards. There's an expectation both from the state, from the school system, and certainly from parents and even faculty that they will do that. But they've managed to elevate how students develop in these process skill domains alongside. Well, part of my role with the Public Education Foundation, part of the role of my office, is to work alongside the STEM school to identify how they're doing these things, and then to help share that. Well, to share how you do this is a little more than sharing what it is. So in 2012, my colleague, my predecessor, Dr. Carrie Randolph, launched a program called STEM Fellows. STEM Fellows is still going strong today. I had the unique pleasure of serving as a STEM Fellow, participating as a teacher who went through the fellowship, and now have the opportunity to lead this work with my team at the Public Education Foundation. STEM Fellows, simply put, is a one-year cohort of in-service teachers. It's made up of 30 to 35 K-12 teachers who are not necessarily teaching in a STEM, like science, technology, engineering, math domain, but it's teachers who have demonstrated a growth mindset and an interest in understanding how STEM disciplines approach problem solving, approach learning, and bringing that approach into their classroom through a variety of mechanisms. As we work to bring this STEM fellowship to teachers, we do several days of professional learning with teachers during the summer when they're out of school, and then we do 4 days of learning while they're in school, where we bring them to let them see STEM in the real world. So the STEM Fellows experience, as we think about how do we equip teachers to make this sort of transition, to start to embrace this STEM mindset, to really start to be systematic about how they equip students to thrive in a world that increasingly requires agile and dynamic skill sets. Well, STEM Fellows focuses on helping teachers develop in these 3 domains. We talk a lot about it as sort of being 3 buckets of teacher development. First, teachers develop as instructional experts. There's a heavy focus on project-based learning. We do a lot of work, and I'll talk a little bit about the details of this later, about helping teachers to transition from being sort of the owner of all content into embracing a role as a facilitator. And then we help them elevate this sort of process over product or process over content mentality to help students really develop these process skills I was just talking about the STEM school. Secondly, we help teachers. The STEM Fellowship is designed to help teachers emerge as teacher leaders. You can see sort of the 3 criteria that this looks like. We equip teachers to be peer-to-peer collaborators. That's both within their building. Oftentimes in our part of the country, teachers, regardless of grade level or discipline, find themselves working perhaps closely with a small team, but being relatively siloed and disconnected from other teachers in their building. Teacher leaders help their peers move past those silos. We also equip them with professional development facilitation skills so they can help train teachers in their building or in their sphere of influence with innovative instructional approaches as they emerge. And then finally, we help them develop with sort of grant and curriculum writing skills as well. Finally, the third bucket that STEM Fellows really focuses on is equipping teachers as community connectors. All STEM Fellows have to create and participate in a job shadow where they do a STEM job shadow. They job shadow someone who works professionally in a STEM discipline. They have to develop an external event for their school. So this is an event for the community, for the parents, and it has to also include a STEM partner. So a partner from a STEM discipline organization in their community. That helps bring the context and make it feel more authentic for their students. Excuse me. And then finally, we talk a lot about teachers developing and sort of learning STEM in the real world. We realized many of our K-12 teachers get to the classroom directly out of their college or university experience, and they've never really worked in a formal STEM environment. They've never spent time in a professional science lab or working alongside engineers or mathematicians. So we want to make sure they're exposed to that. Okay, so STEM Fellows is a big part of how we move teachers into a role where they're capable of leading both within their classroom and beyond their classroom to help their schools and their students develop these process skills and sort of bring back to this idea that we do have to teach that content, but process is also important. Well, I'll go back quickly to the STEM school journey as we work through STEM School Chattanooga. They were getting into their third or fourth year, and they realized a new problem. Their students were working through these rich project-based or problem-based learning units. They all had industry partners. The students were really doing amazing work. The school had excellent test scores, was getting all kinds of accolades and winning awards. But the principal and the faculty realized that there was a new challenge in front of them. They realized that their students were really good at presenting to a public audience. They were actually really good at research and coming up with theoretical solutions, but they didn't have any opportunity in their school to learn through an iterative process. They never got to build their solutions, test them, and see them come to life, see if they actually solved the problem that they were trying to solve or not. All of their presentations were slideshows with, at best, a duct tape and cardboard model to show a proposed solution. Well, with an engineering background, Dr. Tony Donan wanted more for his students. He wanted to push them into opportunities to go through an engineering design cycle, to engage in design thinking, to actually work through iterative product design, and to start reflecting and analyzing when their products didn't work or when their solutions didn't work. Why did they not work? What could they do differently? And start to really evaluate that work. Well, he started looking for ways to increase the authenticity of the kinds of products the students were creating. And he stumbled into Fab Lab. Fab Lab, if you're not familiar, is a collection of standardized tools along with a mindset that comes from the Fab Foundation, which was originally founded out of MIT. The Center for Bits and Atoms at MIT several years ago now started this digital fabrication revolution, where as we think about today, it's pretty popular to talk about maker education and students having access to maker spaces and maker labs. Fab Lab really serves to standardize that work, to build a structured foundation for that work, and to help us, both for students and for community members, really start to build a scalable vision for how you bring these hands-on advanced manufacturing type of experiences to the classroom. For us, the STEM school turned to Fab Lab, and this is where my experience really came to life. I moved from teaching computer science to open the first Fab Lab at the STEM school back in 2014. It absolutely changed what I thought was possible. It was a revolutionary experience for me and has continued to change my work and what I really think is possible for students. So when we talk about Fab Lab, there's a term that often pops up. You see it here on the presentation. It's this idea of digital fabrication. That is using computer-controlled tools, so things like 3D printers, CNC routers, laser cutters, microcomputers, etc., to empower students to create functional solutions to authentic problem solvings, to authentic problems. See, as we talk about process skills and at the STEM school, trying to move students into this idea of sort of elevating these process skills like collaboration and critical thinking without diluting content, we realized we needed a mechanism to do that. We needed some conduit that would allow us the opportunity to put students in a situation where they engaged in such rich experiences that deeper learning was an inevitable consequence of those experiences. Dr. Gary Steger and Sylvia Martinez, the authors of Invent to Learn, and they have a new edition of the same book by the same name, recently was released. Dr. Steger says it this way. He says, Fab Labs in school provides an opportunity for deeper learning as a consequence of rich experiences. Well, we have certainly experienced that in the Fab Labs in our community with the success of the STEM School Lab, and as the Public Education Foundation was starting to figure out how to scale that and how to share that with the community, serendipity came along. Volkswagen made a $1 million investment, turned into a seed investment that catalyzed the development, working in partnership with the state of Tennessee, with Hamilton County Schools, and with the Public Education Foundation. This $1 million investment turned into a more than $3 million investment that has since resulted in the development initially of 16 Volkswagen e-labs, which are just Fab Labs branded by Volkswagen. After that initial sort of 16 that were opened in the first 2 years, Hamilton County Schools has seen such a positive impact. They just opened another 5 plus another one last year. So we're now pushing close to 25 labs in the schools, in the school system. The school system has about 80 schools. So we're closing in on about 30% of our secondary schools having access to these labs. It has been absolutely transformative for our students. But before I get into the details of exactly how Volkswagen e-labs or Fab Labs are transforming the learning experiences for our students, I want to take just a moment and circle back to why we think they even matter. It's a relatively expensive investment to bring these kinds of tools to students. So the question becomes, do you really need this kind of experience in school? Isn't a cardboard model good enough? Well, to drive at that, I'm going to ask you all to react to a picture that I first saw by Brian Solis, who authored the book X, the book. He showed this picture and he asked a simple question. He said, what do you see? So I'm going to ask you the same question. Feel free to put it in the chat. What do you see here? I'll give you just a moment to respond. And given our current setup, I can't see the responses, but I'll tell you what I often hear, and I'll assume that this is maybe in the chat window. What I often hear is people say, I see somebody, there's only one person in this huge crowd who's really taking in the moment, who's living in the moment. Everyone else is consumed with their phone, right? Well, here's what Brian says he sees, and he's convinced me that this is what I see as well. Brian Solis says he sees one really selfish lady. He sees one lady who, whatever amazing thing is happening off the camera, she's not willing to take her phone out and share it with her friends. Everyone else knows that whatever this is that's happening is so amazing. They have to take a picture. They've got to take a video. They've got to put it on social media. They have to text it to their friends. They want to share this experience. They want to be a part of this experience. They want to help create this experience. This is what we think about when we think about educating the current generation. Generation Z, and I'd venture to say even millennials, Generation Z does not want to simply consume content. They want to, and I would say even a step further, they expect to be a part of the creation process. They want to upload as much as they download. Today's students really rarely consume anything in terms of just consuming. They really just consume anything. They really expect to be a part of the experience. What's interesting is that all too often in school is one of the last places on earth where we expect people, the students, to acquire more than they produce. We've designed the entire mechanism of school to be a situation where students' minds are open so teachers can pour in content, so that content experts can pour in content into these students without giving them an opportunity to engage in the kind of rich problem solving that develops opportunities for them to really, really experience deeper learning. Well, what we're excited about in Hamilton County, what we're starting to see in pockets across the country and frankly, across the world. I was just sharing this work with a group of teachers in Portugal just on Saturday. What we're really excited about is that we think things are changing. My goal is that in the next 10 years, this slide is no longer accurate, that we no longer say this, that suddenly school is a place where we expect students to acquire through production, not more than production, that they learn as they build. Well, as I said, in Hamilton County schools, this is, of course, where I live in Southeast Tennessee. We see this all the time. And it asks a simple, so what does this look like question. Well, when you have access to digital fabrication technology, to 3D printers and laser cutters, the kinds of advanced tools that we see in these labs, it suddenly is empowering. It changes the level, the caliber of product that students are able to create, even students as early as kindergarten or first grade. So how we go about doing that is we embrace this sort of creation model that starts with copying. Just, can you basically copy exactly what someone else has done? Not because we want to build a better birdhouse, but because it's a great way to start to develop foundational skills through an experiential model. And then can we work through these stages of honing? Can I copy multiple times to refine those skills? Embellishing, can I just tweak it a little to make it personal? Modifying, so sort of hacking, can I take something someone else has done and modify that idea into something entirely new? Can I see that the motor that runs the pump for the aquarium could be used to run a pump for an automatic hand sanitizer dispenser? And can I make the modifications to do that? And then can I create something entirely new, a unique or novel solution to an authentic problem? Well, we're starting to see this come true in our schools here, and as I said, in pockets really around the world. Wanted to give you a couple of examples of projects that just happened. These all happened within the last 12 months. On the left, you see a young man. He designed a racist door. This young man is a grade 12. He was in grade 12. He was a senior in high school when he did this. I need to explain a little bit about what the racist door was. He wanted to expose the implicit bias that's inherent in artificial intelligence or machine learning systems. So if you look closely at the top of the door, there's a little acrylic box there. He worked with a community partner who was an expert in data analytics and big data to develop a machine learning mechanism that went through public records and identified white collar crimes and started to analyze who was most likely, sort of predict who will most likely commit white collar crimes. That then was connected to a camera, and it used facial analytics software to identify the race of a person that was trying to open the door, and would deny entry to people who were very likely to, or who were expected to commit a crime. Oh, in an ironic twist in this presentation, the young man explained that what the machine learning algorithm, he hacked the algorithm to look specifically for white collar crimes, and he intentionally injected personal bias, that not that he holds, but to demonstrate the possible flaws. The door won't open for middle-aged white men. So as he presented alongside me, I could not open the door because his machine learning had bias that had been introduced in the initial coding algorithms. It was a fascinating example of what this looks like. But far more important for what we were really interested in was not, does the door work? It does. But that really wasn't what we had as a core responsibility. What we really were charged to do was to spark this young man's curiosity and to equip him to thrive as an independent problem solver. Well, the young ladies on the other picture created an automatic dog bowl. It uses a water sensor. It's relatively simple components. It uses a water sensor to realize when the water in the bowl goes below a certain threshold. It activates a small pump and it refills the dog's water bowl automatically. What's interesting here is these young ladies are all 10 and 11 years old. This was the first time they had ever experienced coding, and they did not get a single lesson from their teacher in coding. Instead, because the way the PBL was designed, these students had worked through a year of developing the skills to access information, interpret it, work with peers around them, and then leverage the access they have in these Volkswagen e-labs to advanced technologies to develop real solutions to real problems. They thrived. They demonstrated this ability to thrive as master learners. They learned new information as they needed it, applied it, and created a functional solution. So I want to close the presentation by helping to sort of connect these two to help you see the relationship between VW Labs and STEM Fellows. And really this becomes the how do you do this? Because there's a gaping hole so far in this story. And the hole is, well, teachers have never really been trained in this kind of work. Teachers need a significant paradigm shift, and they need a lot of development, both on the technical side and the pedagogical side. So we framed it this way as we set out to provide that professional learning or training for teachers. We realized that the historical K-12 education model, it embraces a sort of factory instructional model where teachers serve as content experts. They're expected to know their content at a very high level. I would contend that's still important, but they're content experts who share their content knowledge with students to increasingly prepare those students for very specific roles. So in the old global economy, or the old economy that wasn't quite global yet, there wasn't a need for agile skills. The workforce needs weren't dynamic enough. We could pretty well predict the percentage of doctors and lawyers and engineers and factory workers that we needed. So you could build school designed to fill those specific roles. However, as the turn of the century came about, as computing increasingly became prolific in essentially every discipline, we needed to embrace a model that could prepare students for success in that dynamic world. So we started talking about this idea of an adaptive instructional model where teachers serve as learning experts who empower students to thrive as independent problem identifiers and problem solvers. That is to say, students don't wait for the teacher to tell them the strategy to solve a problem, then put the problem discreetly in front of them, and then expect them to use that strategy to solve the problem that they just taught them how to solve. Instead, we're working to equip students to be able to independently identify there's an opportunity, there's a challenge, there's a problem, and then leverage the skills they've developed in school to solve those problems as part of a collaborative team. Well, this training, it changes teachers. As COVID-19, as the pandemic hit in our community, we had been fortunately 3 years into this work already. We had a cadre of about 25 teachers who had gone through intensive training, more than 3 years worth of training to run these labs, who were successfully developing these opportunities for students. And we pivoted on a dime as our schools closed, and we joined in the effort to participate in social distancing to mitigate the impact of the pandemic in the United States and in our community. We realized our medical community had a significant, as many places in the world, had a significant PPE shortage. We had access to over 100 3D printers in these labs, so we aggregated them in a large space. We worked with a team out of Czechoslovakia, the Joseph Prusa team. We modified the design of a headband that they have there. You can see the young man there is actually a teacher for one of our labs. We brought the teachers in, and we started assembling PPE as quickly as possible. Just to give you a quick timeline on that work, we began in March 19, 2020. When our schools closed. By April 28th, so basically 1 month later, we had printed, assembled, and delivered nearly 7,200 face shields. This is a perfect example of how our teachers have developed and embraced this mindset of emerging as a master learner. Well, How you actually get them to emerge there, for us, we try to make moves for teachers in 5 broad domains, whether it's through STEM fellows, through Volkswagen eLabs, or other work when we're working with teachers and school leaders. We really see teachers having to make sort of 5 significant transformations in their work. They need to move, as I've said before, from master teacher to sort of model learner. They have to become collaborators beyond their content expertise. They start to shift from being a didactic content delivery person into this PBL facilitator. And then we really work hard on shifting from a prescriptive instructional model into a contextualized model. That is to say, identifying the core elements of whatever content or process we're trying to teach, but then building it alongside teachers and even their students, so that whatever content or process it is that we're trying to teach, whatever those standards are that we're driving toward, that they're implemented in the classroom in a way that is contextualized specifically to meet students within the context where they're learning. So these are culturally relevant. These are appropriate for students at regardless of grade level or ethnicity or socioeconomic strata. We want to build the specific learning experiences for those students. And then finally, we move for teachers, we move from structured training to this idea of just-in-time learning. So it's embracing this engineering principle that I don't need to be an expert computer programmer to teach physical computing to 6th grade or 7th grade students. I need a foundational understanding. I need baseline expertise, but I don't have to have a PhD in computing to be able to do that. Instead, I just need to have enough requisite skills to do it to teach those concepts effectively, and then the capacity to learn new skills quickly as needed. So I wanted to close with this quickly. The one hole that people will sort of poke at us is this is all interesting. We could see these rich experiences for students, but does it really result in academic growth? Or are you just moving them in these process domains and abandoning academic growth? Well, in Hamilton County Schools, under the director of our newest superintendent in our region, Dr. Brian Johnson, who came along just as the VWE labs, the Fab labs, were starting to develop. He's played a key role in integrating this work in our schools. And as these labs have rolled out, I don't think it's totally disconnected that our schools have seen historic growth as well. In Tennessee, in our state, 5 is the best grade a school can get for academic growth. As you can see here in the 2018-19 school year, we had 5s across the board. So 21 schools has 5s in every level. And it's the highest level of academic growth we've ever had in our community, in our school system, ever. And you can see there sort of some of the domains that they're testing. It also meant that we had significant shifts in terms of our school system's performance academically in the state. So you can see here the growth ranking moved in just 2 short years from being number 130 in the state to number 2. Now, I don't want to mislead. This growth was not directly the result or solely the result of integrating digital fabrication or embracing this focus on a STEM mindset. I do think they were contributing factors. The school system also, under Dr. Johnson's administration, implemented a number of interesting initiatives that help students continue to develop and move in these academic domains. But whether the digital fabrication or whether the STEM mindset directly contributed to this incredible growth or not, what's clear is it didn't inhibit the growth. We know we were able to increase how students engaged in process skill development without detracting from how effectively they could grow in academic domains. Well, as I draw this to a close and prepare to move to the question and answer time, wanted to leave you with this. Worked with the founder of STEM School Chattanooga, Dr. Tony Donen, a former Albert Einstein fellow, Joshua Snyderman. We wrote a book a couple of years ago now. We give it away as a free ebook. You can go to letmetryitbook.com. It's there on the screen for you. Would love for you to have a free copy of that. It just sort of gets at some of the high level thoughts and philosophies. It's more pedagogical than instructional, but sort of focuses on the pedagogy and philosophy that we use to bring digital fabrication to schools. Okay, with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can see the chat and see if there's any questions.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Michael Stone, for the insightful presentation. And it's certainly very enlightening. And I'm sure the idea of STEM fellows has helped teachers broaden their networking. Now, obviously, they're able to successfully work together in a team to solve real problems. Next, we have a few questions. The first question is, now, Mr. Stone, the STEM Fellows, is this for science and maths teachers only?
No, so STEM Fellows is open and intentionally recruits and attracts teachers from kindergarten through 12th grade across any discipline, including like librarians, media specialists, special ed teachers, foreign language teachers. So we have humanities and STEM disciplines represented.
All right, next question. When they finish STEM Fellows, what is their next step?
That's a great question. So we charge teachers to do two things. One, they leave STEM Fellows, and we encourage them to join the STEM Fellow Alumni Network. We now have more than 200 fellows in our community. There's about 4,000 teachers in the school system, but this STEM Fellows is regional, so it expands to really cover about 8,000 teachers, sort of impact schools with 8,000 teachers in our region. So we asked them to join the alumni network. That helps them stay connected to this group of teacher leaders who who go through this process year after year. So the first part is stay connected and stay on the cutting edge. The second is we charge them with leading from the classroom. So STEM Fellows is not designed, though it certainly happens from time to time. The goal is not to equip teachers to emerge as a leader who leaves the classroom and moves into school administration, who becomes a principal or superintendent. We believe that there's a need for great teachers to lead while still teaching, while still maintaining that direct connection to students into the classroom. So what happens next to some degree is we encourage those teachers, and we often use those teachers. We ask them to be an active part of the network to lead professional development, to keep their ear to the ground, to constantly challenge the norm, to innovate, and to share those innovations as they put them into practice in their classroom.
Right. We have another question here. How do you help teachers who are great in teaching to incorporate technology to help Generation Z?
This probably has cultural relevance, or there's probably a cultural component to this in every community around the world. Locally, I can speak to what this looks like. So in our location, there is oftentimes a generation gap. Some of our best teachers are perhaps some of our most closed-minded to adopting newer technologies. We hear a lot of times, I can be a great teacher, with a piece of chalk and a chalkboard. I don't need a computer, and I don't need a screen, and I certainly don't need all of these fabrication tools. I wouldn't argue with that. You can be a great teacher with a piece of chalk and a chalkboard. However, to get to the question, how do you help teachers who are great in teaching incorporate technology? I think it's really not about telling teachers what to do or demanding that they incorporate technology. Instead, I think it's about giving teachers the same way that we do with treating teachers, in many ways, the same way we treat students. That is to say, give teachers rich experiences. Let them see the value or have firsthand experiences with the value of particular technologies, and start small. Pick one technology and help a teacher have a meaningful experience with that. Let them see how it makes their job easier and how it makes them more effective. When they see those two things, then it's not a question of what the tool is. Whether the tool runs on electricity or not is irrelevant. Every teacher wants to develop excellent experiences for their students. They want to deliver high quality learning. If they have experiences with technology, that they realize technology can help change how students engage in learning, inevitably teachers at their core will embrace that new technology.
All right, another question. What goes on in Fab Lab in K-12?
That's a loaded question. There's a lot to talk about there. So I think the simplest answer to what goes on in Fab Lab is they make a lot of messes. The students make a lot of messes. The teachers make a lot of messes. And it's in the mess where a lot of the learning happens. Rather than focusing on in the Fab Labs that we work with, and I think this is a little bit unique to the model, we don't create prescriptive projects. In other words, we don't ask students to make the same thing, right? The goal isn't that they learn 3D printing or that they learn CAD so they can use a CNC router. Instead, the goal is, can they use these tools and processes to solve problems? So we're constantly putting them in a situation to solve a problem, to document their process, to share their process, and then to receive feedback about their process and their solution. So we're constantly trying to assess how and why they did what they did, as opposed to what they did. It turns out the tools provide excellent motivation for the students to be ambitious and to take some risks.
All right, one more, yeah? Now, how do you prepare teachers to lead the work, and how long does it take to get teachers fully prepared?
So that's another kind of big question. How do we do it? I'm going to harken back to the previous answer. A lot of it is putting teachers in experiences where they can really see the value in this kind of mindset, leveraging using these kinds of tools. It's a lot of sort of experiential learning for teachers, helping them to realize they don't have to know everything, but they need to know how to learn anything. As they realize that, they become much more agile, much more confident. And with that confidence comes a capacity to really lead innovative work in their classroom. How long does it take? I'm assuming is referencing how long does it take to move a teacher from being like an English teacher or an art teacher or math teacher to run a Fab Lab. That really depends on the teacher's specific background. For us, what we do, we spend about 150 hours the first summer before a teacher leads the Fab Lab. We spend 150 hours or so helping them develop the philosophy and pedagogy skills necessary to effectively lead learning in these spaces. We do a small amount of time, maybe 20 hours or so, focused on sort of very basic technology training to prepare teachers. It's mostly focused on safety, prepare teachers to safely operate and manage their lab and have students use their tools safely without incident. Then over the next 3 years, we provide monthly support and followed up with summer professional learning sessions that become increasingly technical. We've realized that most teachers, the biggest need for teachers from a technical standpoint in these labs is helping teachers develop their capacity in computer programming and coding. As we think about physical computing, which really brings the digital side, the digital fabrication, that takes a little longer to help teachers develop. It's a little, you can't just say, go watch a YouTube video and you suddenly can be a programmer.
All right, our last question, yeah? How do you work with industry and community partners in this work?
Love this question. So the simplest way that we do a lot of work with industry and community partners, the simplest way to get at this is to say, we realized in our community, and I think this is true in most places, teachers, when they look for community partners, when they look for industry partners, schools have a bad reputation of going to industry partners asking for money first or for speakers. It turns out teachers are generally much better public speakers than computer programmers or than engineers. So rather than asking for money, which oftentimes gets the door closed, or asking for guest speakers to come to our classroom, it scares people to come speak in front of students. What we do instead is we ask industry partners to give us real problems that our students could try to solve. So the very specific ask is, will they give us 1 hour at the beginning of a PBL unit where they will pitch the problem to students? It's great if we can bring our students to them and they can see it at the industry location. But if not, they can come and pitch the problem to our students. Over the next 8 to 9 weeks, the students will work to solve those problems, to develop their solutions. And then at the end, we ask that industry partner to come back and let our students present the solutions to them. So we essentially ask at a minimum for 2 hours of their time, one for them to give us the problem and one for us to give for our students to give them a potential solution. It has opened unbelievable amount of doors for industry partners and has created long-term partnerships in many of our schools that we could have otherwise, I think, never done.
All right, looks like that will be our last question. And with that, we have come to the end of the session for today. But please allow me to highlight some key points from today's session. First, industry and higher ed want process skills related to innovation, critical thinking, and collaboration. The second key point from today's session, students must be empowered to create functional solutions to authentic problems. Another point will be students must also be empowered with adaptive problem-solving skills in collaboration, critical thinking, creativity, and communication. Now, on top of that, teachers serve as content experts to prepare students for specific roles and also as learning experts who will empower students to thrive as independent problem identifiers and problem solvers. Thank you once again, Mr. Michael Stone, for sharing with us your ideas on the topic of STEM Fellows and Volkswagen E-Labs. And without doubt, everyone has benefited and enjoyed your presentation. I'm sure we all agree that STEM plays a very important role in education today. Our next session will be on the 8th of October from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Malaysian time. And the topic is Emotional Intelligence in Leadership by Dr. Premalata Nair. Do join us for this session. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you once again and see you soon. Have a pleasant day.